On this channel, we've often explored strange and controversial topics: ancient alien theories, alternative medicine, belief in invisible powers of various kinds, and even sects whose leaders claim messianic status as humanity's sole saviors. We've also extensively covered the disturbing actions of the Chinese Communist Party or CCP, from relentless persecution to outright oppression of its critics. Many of my viewers sympathize with the Falun Gong practitioners, and understandably so. To be clear, politically, we're very much on the same side against the CCP, which poses a profound threat not only to China, but to the entire world. However, today's discussion will critically examine Falun Gong itself, exploring beliefs and practices some may find uncomfortable. If you might be offended by that, now is a good moment to switch to another video. To understand Falun Gong, we first need to grasp traditional Chinese medicine or TCM. Falun Gong, which means law wheel work, sometimes called Falun Dafa, the great law of the law wheel, abides by traditional Chinese medicine principles, including the well-known yin-yang symbol, the concept of qi, life energy, and the theory of the 5 elements. Modern traditional Chinese treatments often include herbal medicine, dietary therapies, massages, needling, and cupping, all based on the supposed manipulation of qi. All this even though science hasn't found any evidence of qi or qi channels and pathways, aka meridians, in the human body. Essentially, traditional Chinese medicine relies heavily on belief rather than empirical evidence, similar to faith healing practices seen in other cultures. TCM has some really crazy stuff like chicken blood injections, dog penis wine, and drinking bile extracted from living bears, but we're not going to dig into all that today. The context for Falun Gong's rise traces all the way back to Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976, during which the Chinese Communist Party or CCP systematically sought to erase traditional Chinese beliefs and practices and replace them with a personality cult focused on the great leader. Christian churches were converted into factories, Muslim graveyards were bulldozed, and countless Taoist and Buddhist texts were burned. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake, interpreted by many as a loss of heaven's mandate along with Mao's death later the same year, left an immense spiritual void. This ideological vacuum and subsequent cultural liberalization created fertile ground for alternative spiritual movements, including Qigong, to flourish. Qigong, central to Falun Gong, literally translates to energy work, combining movement, breath, and mental focus to supposedly enhance qi. During the 1980s and 1990s, China experienced a massive Qigong craze, spawning extravagant claims of supernatural abilities known as 特异功能, literally extraordinary talents. Practitioners boasted of supernatural powers like telepathy, remote viewing, levitation, seeing through their skin, being able to shoot out qi rays, healing diseases at great distances, and even bending metal objects with their minds. In this environment emerged Li Hongzhi, founder of Falun Gong. Starting as a trumpet instructor with a high school level correspondence education and no medical or philosophical background, Li Hongzhi rose rapidly, claiming extraordinary spiritual powers and quickly becoming revered as a savior. Li asserted that he and he alone could implant an intelligent entity made of energy called a law wheel into followers' abdomens.
In the lecture, I'll plant a Falun on the students. I'll personally place it at their lower abdominal area. Once this Falun is planted, it will constantly rotate. It can collect the energy from the universe on its own. When rotating inward clockwise, it collects energy from the universe and then transforms it to supply the energy needed for different parts of one's body.
This energy wheel would protect them from disease caused by interdimensional, demonic, or alien forces who caused bad black qi to accumulate in the human body, leading to disease. He also claimed that these entities were aiming to possess and replace every human soul through moral decay like homosexuality, interracial relationships, feminism, and belief in evolution and modern science. Oh, and also he could teach you to see through walls and levitate.
越练越好的时候，他就会起来。这个我们学员中也很多，但是大多数呢都不让他表现出来，因为那么多人都表现出来，他会破坏常人社会状态。
To better understand the situation, it's important to note that Li wasn't the only super Qigong master who profited immensely during this craze. Numerous charismatic leaders emerged, founding lucrative Qigong schools and organizations, often generating wealth through large-scale seminars, instructional videos.
会员有了感觉以后，我们继续引气往上走。
Books, personal consultations, and organized tours to sacred sites. One particularly notable figure was Zhang Hongpao, founder of Qigong Boom, who styled himself as a new Confucius destined to lay the foundation for a new civilization. Zhang built a multi-million-dollar empire and even maintained a private security force, demonstrating clearly just how profitable and influential these self-proclaimed Qigong masters could become. Li heavily emphasized his supposed healing powers, instructing practitioners to completely abandon Western medicine, suggesting reliance on modern healthcare demonstrated a lack of faith in his powers. Those who died after discontinuing their prescribed medications were harshly criticized by Li, labeled as weak believers or even accused of being demonic infiltrators deliberately harming Falun Gong's reputation. Li's claims about interdimensional demonic alien forces closely resemble ancient astronaut conspiracy theories popularized by figures like Erich von Däniken, citing evidence of prehistoric alien civilizations on Earth, such as the infamous Ica stones that Li himself referred to, proven fakes from Peru. Yet, despite all the far-out pseudoscience and extraordinary claims lacking extraordinary evidence, Li himself even directly comparing traditional Chinese medicine to Western magic in his own writings. After registering Falun Gong as a movement in 1992, Li had already gathered millions of faithful followers by the late 1990s, and this alarmed the CCP. Logically, this makes sense, as China has a history of spiritual leaders overthrowing governments, exemplified by the rise of Zhu Jianjiang, a former Buddhist monk who joined the Red Turban Rebellion, a movement inspired by the White Lotus Society and its millenarian belief in the coming of the future Buddha. Zhu leveraged this religious fervor to ascend through rebel ranks, capturing Nanjing in 1356 and ultimately establishing the Ming Dynasty in 1368. Li Hongzhi left China in 1996, from then on mainly communicating with his Chinese disciples over the internet. But between his departure and 1999, which would go down as a catastrophic year in Falun Gong history, practitioners initiated hundreds of protests against any and all bad critique aimed at Master Li's teachings. In early 1999, when He Soxiu, a professor at the Tianjin University, published an article criticizing Falun Gong, saying that the sect would mentally impair young people, 2,000 Falun Gong practitioners staged a peaceful protest outside the university, demanding a retraction. The university refused, and authorities arrested several demonstrators, igniting outrage within the Falun Gong community. This led directly to Falun Gong's massive 1999 protest at Zhongnanhai, the CCP's most sensitive government compound in Beijing. Tens of thousands of practitioners silently protested. They stayed for 12 hours until Chinese Premier Li Hongzhi told them that they would address their grievances. The sheer number of protesters and the police failure to anticipate them was taken as a direct threat against the regime. Swiftly after this event, the Chinese government labeled Falun Gong an evil cult and initiated severe persecution. One of the most controversial and highly publicized incidents occurred in January of 2001, when 5 people set themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square. Li Hongzhi and Falun Gong quickly distanced themselves from the incident, condemning the act and claiming it was staged by the government to discredit the movement. Despite this denial, the incident, alongside other deaths, claimed to be due to Li's teachings, such as a person attempting to cut out the law wheel from his body physically, has significantly influenced the public perception of Falun Gong in both China and abroad. It's difficult to know what the truth is here, as both the CCP and the FLG are known to not stick strictly to facts in their retelling of events. But a detail of note is that Li Hongzhi coldly stated that if the self-immolators were indeed real Falun Gong martyrs, they were bad practitioners, as he did not approve of suicide. Since then, the FLG has aggressively fought back. Notably, in 2002, practitioners hijacked Chinese television networks, broadcasting anti-government content. Arrests followed, and according to Falun Gong sources, several practitioners later died from torture in custody. In exile, Li Hongzhi established a sprawling, seemingly ever-expanding headquarters called Dragon Springs, just a couple hours away from New York City, where he maintains tight control over a global network, including Shen Performing Arts and Epoch Times Media Group, publisher of the Epoch Times and in charge of New Tang Dynasty Television. Shen Performances, which you have probably seen plenty of advertisement for since its inception in 2006, while visually impressive, heavily embed anti-evolution and anti-atheism messages alongside highlighting organ harvesting allegations against China. Although China officially banned the use of organs from executed prisoners in 2015, yes, it was legal up until then. There are still serious concerns about the transparency and ethics of the country's organ transplantation system, to say the least. It's almost impossible to verify the extent of these alleged abuses due to the lack of transparency from the Chinese authorities. International organizations and human rights groups continue to call for independent investigations and greater transparency in China's organ transplantation practices, and I support Falun Gong in bringing attention to the issue. In 2016, Epoch Media took a sharp turn towards radical alt-right politics, particularly supporting Donald Trump, whom Falun Gong view as a divine figure destined to punish China, but also going really far in other directions, like proposing DNA-based deportation in the German version of their newspaper. The Epoch Times and related platforms also frequently promote pseudoscientific and conspiratorial content, with articles such as "New study explores telepathy related to phone calls," "Superpowers help doctors look inside human bodies without machines," and "Anthropologists convinced elves live alongside regular people in Iceland." The Epoch Times also claims dangerous stuff like the horse dewormer medication ivermectin being both safe and effective against both COVID-19 and cancer, with homeopathic practitioners without any proper medical certifications writing their articles. The group's finances are significant. Shen, which has 8 dance companies and tours for over 6 months across 130 cities annually, reported assets exceeding $266 million in 2023, largely thanks to volunteers, practitioners' donations, and aggressive global ticket sales. Meanwhile, Falun Gong-affiliated non-profits like Friends of Falun Gong funnel millions every year to various Falun Gong activities, blurring the lines between spiritual mission and big business. Because of their vast network of media outlets, many of which deny any formal connection to Falun Gong, it's increasingly difficult to avoid encountering their content, especially if you're interested in topics critical of the Chinese government's authoritarianism and human rights abuses. Whether it's Epoch Times, Shen, New Tang Dynasty TV, or their own cursed YouTube clone platform, Ganjing World, Falun Gong's media footprint is enormous. If you're looking for reliable, critical, and truly independent reporting on China, content that I can personally assure is 100% Falun Gong free, I highly recommend checking out The China Show, hosted by Serpent ZA and Lawai86, live every Friday 5 PM EST right here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end as well, of course. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you liked it, remember to give me a comment, a like, and maybe even subscribe. See ya!